Hello and welcome to YCFT. We are your hosts, David and Sam. It's a habit we never got into. We never introduce ourselves, so I'm trying it. And this week, we want you to join us on our couch as we go back to the 90s. As the title of this video is a little bit of a clue, we are looking at I Know What You Did Last Summer. It has been a hot minute since we went back to the 90s.
It has been a hot minute.
Yeah, this was released, 1997?
Mm-hmm.
I Know What You Did Last Summer was to Scream what Friday the 13th was to Halloween.
Yeah.
I think a few people will get that.
Yes.
This film was the first Scream knockoff. It came in the wake.
Literally, 1 year after.
Yeah, the new slasher boom. And it's also written by Kevin Williamson, the same person who wrote Scream.
Mm-hmm.
Although the rights to the book, who was written by...
Lois Duncan, back in 1973.
Yeah, the rights were actually bought prior to Scream, but it was adapted after Scream.
Heavily adapted.
So, brief synopsis of this before we jump into this. It revolves around a group of attractive teens who have just graduated high school. They're partying on the beach, getting ready to...
Go off to college.
Go
Live their
go
lives.
Explore the world. They live in this little fisher town, and one of them has just become the fish queen.
Can I just in the opening bit, where they're on the beach and they're just getting drunk, a toast to us, to our last summer of immature adolescent decadence. Cheers.
It's in a Dawson's something, isn't it?
Dawson's Beach.
Dawson's Beach.
Yeah.
Obviously, Kevin Williamson at this time was also working on Dawson's Creek, which filmed in the same place.
North Carolina.
As this.
Yeah.
Their futures are brightly laid out ahead of them until they drive back, and the drunken antics of one of the members causes the driver to get distracted, and they run over a man.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming him to be dead, they decide to get rid of the body as not to try and ruin their perfect futures.
Yes.
But at first, he's not dead. He is not dead.
He's not actually dead, you know.
So they still get rid of the body.
Yeah. And they still don't double check that he's dead.
He's
even
still
the second time.
not dead. Cut to a year later. Our lead character receives a note saying, I know what you did last summer.
Yep, she does. That she does.
What precedes a few days of our characters being stalked and frightened by a hook-wielding fisherman.
Yes.
Slowly killing off our core cast of characters.
Characters.
What do you is that fair?
I mean, I think that's pretty fair to say. That's a fair assessment of the movie. Yeah.
I personally did not see this before seeing the spoof on it.
Okay.
Scary Movie.
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah. And it's amazing how well the stories of I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream blend together in that film. But there's so many scenes of this movie where I absolutely cannot unhear lines from Scary Movie.
I would not go so far as to say that watching I Know What You Did Last Summer is ruined because of Scary Movie. It's far from it. But there are scenes that I can only hear in Scary Movie. Like the quotes from that film, I can only see it from that perspective. I can't take certain scenes seriously at all.
Yeah, it's never in our favourite franchise,
It's not. It never really has. But I always enjoy this movie.
Yeah. It's a flashback to the 90s, obviously the decade that we grew up in.
Yeah. Not to compare it too much to Scream, but I do think out of the two, Scream is better. It's technically a better film. There's similarities across the board. You know, they're both sort of murder mysteries to an extent. They are whodunits. And I Know What You Did is a compelling mystery, but I think ultimately the execution and the climax is done better in Scream than it is here.
The author of this, you said, interestingly, we did actually order the book.
We did.
But it hasn't arrived.
It's not arrived, unfortunately. It was meant to arrive yesterday. Yeah, the author of the novel is which was a novelist called Lois Duncan. And yeah, she published it in 1973, and she did, from what I can gather, a series of books that were very similar in genre, sort of teen sleuth stories. The novel is not a slasher. It's hardly even a horror story. It's the film is loosely adapted. So the book also involves a hit and run accident at the beginning where a group of teenagers they vow never to speak about what happens. But spoilers for the book, no other characters die. It's the only death is at the beginning in the car accident, and then the teenagers a year later are sort of stalked by someone that knows what they did. But yeah, Lois Duncan, last summer, but she was steadfastly against turning the story into a horror film, and I think unfortunately it was largely brought about because her daughter in real life was murdered in the late 80s. So I think she was probably against maybe horrors anyway, but the murder of her own daughter kind of just cemented that. So she was just against like any kind of violence towards teenagers in general. So she didn't like it when it was announced they were turning it into a horror movie. I don't know what her overall opinion was on the finished film.
But she also updated. It's quite unique. She every few years she would update this like with modern things like phones and stuff like that, modern dialogue.
I find this really cool. Like, I can't think of any other example of this. But yeah, bearing in mind that this book was published in the 70s, she's one of the only writers I'm aware of that revised her own works and republished them for later generations. So I think I Know What You Did was republished in the 2000s, I think. And she updated the dialogue and she updated certain scenes so the characters would have phones and they'd be listening to, modern music at the time. I just think that's so cool.
That is really very unique, and she was a successful author outside of that novel as well.
She was, yeah.
It's not like the shit on Twilight, but I feel like Stephanie Myers has kind of rinsed, like releasing a version of Twilight from another character's perspective. For me, feels a bit lazy and unnecessary. She was successful outside of this.
Oh yeah, she was a successfully published writer. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jim Gillespie?
Jim Gillespie.
Jim Gillespie, who directed this. So I think it was his first big film, and a big part of what makes this film work is the cast. The writing is, for the most part, pretty good for the times. Obviously, it's Kevin Williamson. You kind of got teen dialogue, but we got Jennifer Love Hewitt as Julie James.
As Julie James.
James. We have Sarah Michelle Gellar as Helen. Helen Shivers.
Yeah.
That's a great horror name. But this is the same year that she was in Scream 2.
Yes.
And Buffy the Vampire Slayer premiered. Massive year for Sarah Michelle Gellar. Freddie Prinze Jr. as Ray.
Yes.
I've forgotten his last name, but he's just Ray.
He's just Ray.
And Ryan Phillippe as...
Barry.
I always forget, he's just Ryan Phillippe to me.
Ryan Phillippe is Ryan Phillippe.
They are great. They are a great cast for
are.
this. I love all of them in these roles. We even have in a side role Johnny Galecki, like about 10 years before the Big Bang Theory, which was quite cool. It was quite cool seeing. He just did not age in those 10 years.
No, he didn't know.
And interestingly, Freddie Prinze Jr. has a horror podcast.
Yes, he does.
So I'm going to pull a few things from that, but I don't want to just go over everything, because the very first episode, it's called That Was Pretty Scary. And the first episode is about I Know What You Did Last Summer. Mm-hmm. I'll link it below if you want to go watch that episode. He did not have a great experience on this film.
No, he didn't.
It was his first film. Everyone else seems to have a really good experience and skip ahead to the sequel. Jennifer Love Hewitt was very disappointed when the director didn't return for another one. He wasn't the director's first choice. He auditioned for this film about 5 times.
Yeah.
And he was like, not the director's choice. And he made it very clear that he did not want him in the role. And he finally clashed with him quite a bit. There's a stunt with a boat later on that he wanted to do, which was very dangerous. Did it once and no, I'm not doing that. So they clashed a lot. And it actually says on trivia that he's never watched the film since. That is now false, because he watched it this year for his podcast. And what's really cute is him and Sarah Michelle Gellar are married.
Yes.
I love that. That is fantastic. But from the Scream episode, we found out that he also auditioned for Scream. For Skeet Ulrich's role.
Yes.
Which is quite... And he got down to the final 3 and he didn't get it. He blew it. He says in other words, he didn't have the edge. And Kevin Williams said to him, don't worry about it, this role just wasn't for you, but there is a role out there for you, you will get something. And he found out in the rehearsals for this that Kevin Williamson said he was going to make sure that he got this role. Yeah. That he wanted him for it.
It's not so
he might not have been the director's first role, but he was the studio's first choice and he was the writer's first choice.
The director didn't have his back, but the writer did. And
he is the right one for this role. He would not have worked as Billy in Scream, but he does work in this role.
We'll get into it, because as much as I do like the cast, I do think that Freddie Prinze has, of the 2 male roles, the 2 male leads, I think Freddie has the toughest job. Yeah, because also he's absent for a lot of the film. Doesn't really have a lot to do.
Because the problem that this film has is setting up several people that could be the killer. Yeah, and that makes Freddie have to take a step back. Yeah, just playing this amazing scenes.
Cool.
And then into other stuff that we just don't really think
that's fine
works. So the opening with the crash.
The opening is like. Honestly, as I say, I've always liked this movie, but it was only the last time we watched it, the most recent rewatch. It didn't I've never realised before just how actually well done that opening sequence really is. First of all, just like I got a huge kick out of that like that helicopter shot. It wouldn't have been a drone shot back in 1997, I guess. But like when the camera
or maybe a crane shot, a helicopter shot over the hills, and there's crane shots over the cars.
Very Lost Boys-esque. And then also similarly to that, we also get this like really rocky rendition of Summer Breeze.
Yeah.
Which is really like, obviously it's a happy, cheery song generally, but they had this, I don't know, it's like very grungy version play over.
Well, the director is a massive Hitchcock fan, and it's filmed in the same location that The Birds was filmed, and a lot of shots that he does
it's near Bodega
are homages to
I think
Hitchcock.
some scenes were filmed in Bodega Bay, I think. Yeah.
Which is really good, but that whole sequence...
Oh, it's great.
It is absolutely great. And another thing that I quite like, I kind of got this from the podcast, is Kevin Williamson went up to each of them and told them all how their character would react
to the hit and run.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, fear. Ryan Phillippe, anger, because he's angry this has happened to him. He wasn't the one driving. Ray was guilt.
Yes.
Obviously, he was the one that was driving. Jennifer is like penitence, I think he said.
It's penitence, yeah.
Like she
feels the full responsibility.
She wants to be punished for what they've done, and that could add into their performances.
Yes.
I think a lot of people disagree with how well this works when we do go to a year later and see how the lives haven't quite panned out. And there's also an element of like the friends you have in high school aren't necessarily going to be the friends you have in later life. You do drift apart. I actually do count myself very lucky that a lot of my friends from high school are still my very good friends. There's equally like loads of people from back then that I just don't talk to.
Well, also, to be fair to you guys, you've never hit someone with a car before.
Well, not publicly.
Oh, shit.
And I kind of like it's like that representation of sometimes people do just drift apart.
Yeah.
But like this secret has essentially torn their friendship apart, torn the relationship, because there were two couples and they've obviously been torn apart by that.
Yeah.
I really like that jump in time because they feel like very different characters from that scene to the very next scene. And it feels like a year has passed.
I agree with that. I think the opening does a really good job of establishing who the characters are. Because in a way, like they fit into those sort of general stereotypes even before the hit and run happens, even before this really kind of terrible traumatic thing happens. But yeah, when we see them a year later and they're all in very different places, but there's still like echoes of the same person there. But it's one of the biggest strengths of the movie ultimately is like this, almost this soap opera like quality that the film has, because it is dedicated a lot. Something that the sequels are lacking in is the dynamics of the friendships and of the relationships and unresolved tension and the sadness that things shouldn't have ended this way, but they did end this way because they've let them end this way. And it's obviously something that Kevin Williamson kind of ran with when he did Dawson's Creek, because like obviously that's not horror, it's not a slasher show, but it is all about relationships, teen relationships. So I think that side of the movie is done really really well.
I also really like the setting, the coastal town, the fishing town. It's like the killer himself.
He's a fisherman.
The fisherman. That coat, the raincoat, the hook. It's iconic in itself. It really is. But also it fits. I'm going to compare it to Scream again, because the Scream outfit is also iconic and it was a real Halloween costume.
Yeah.
Only ever works around Halloween, really. This town, that fisherman's outfit, most men in that town will own that a variation on that coat because it's that's the biggest employment in that town.
Yeah.
So he fits that set. Again, something I think that is lost in the sequels.
Definitely.
So I'm going to throw in a little bit of a downside to this. I think they could have played with more. There are some scenes where we have like a couple of people in fisherman's coat and they're kind of looking like, oh, is he there? Oh, no. He's not. I think they really missed the moment of having a scene where like they're on the docks. They think the fisherman's there. They might be following him. And then suddenly like boat comes in and loads of people in the same outfit get off the boat and it's raining.
It could have
really played on that a bit more. But the outfit that he wears suits the setting and like the whole the pageantry of having like the I'm just going to call her the fish queen.
The fish queen, because she's like beauty queen, isn't she?
Like the beauty queen, and I like that whole thing, and it feels like a place that's lived in. Apparently, like loads of things filmed in that town.
Oh yeah. I think North Carolina's popular filming location.
So I think that's, and also like the fish hook itself, like it feels like such a cumbersome weapon to use.
Yeah, but
you can't really slash it like a knife, but it means like the kills feel different to Scream.
Yeah, yes, it's a different setting.
And the fisherman is played amazingly, I think, by Amuse Watson. I don't know if he was always in the costume, but when we sites when we do see Muse outside of the costume.
Yeah.
I'm not saying who his character is just yet.
Yeah.
He's brilliant.
Oh, he's great.
In it.
He is, yeah, he is great. I like the fisherman as a killer, like as a concept. I think that really works. Yeah. We said, I think it was probably the Mutilator video that we did where I was like, I adore like coastal little seaside towns and settings. I don't know why, I just really like it as a backdrop.
I also know, but I grew up by a seaside town, so we didn't have fish hook wielding killers, but nothing, always perfect. Yeah, so I really enjoy that aspect. I just wish they'd played into it more, and I think that's something they could do, because Scream did it in Scream 4 with the Stabathon in the barn where they're all wearing the costumes, and the Scream TV series did it in like season 3 when they all go to a club and everyone gets handed like the ghost face mask and they're all raving in the costumes, but the killer's there. We could have had that. It could have been one of the first to do it, but they missed the boat on that one. They missed the fisherman's boat on that one.
They did.
He kills off Johnny Galecki.
He's the first to go, I think.
Which that was a reshoot, wasn't it? To kill, like they said. I think Tess Torrance said to kill, like there needed to be a kill earlier
to build some tension,
and that is brilliant.
Yeah,
Fisher through the back.
Oh, it's great.
It
is.
Love it.
It's a good scene. Yeah.
Ryan Phillippe he's chased down, but not killed because it's not time. It's not the anniversary.
Oh
yet.
Yeah, that's true. Just staring with him.
I always think that Helen should have been the final girl. Sarah Michelle Gellar. And all I'm going to say in the sequel, they rewrite Julie, who is our final girl, and this to be more like Sarah. I say, being the character that is afraid, fearful throughout the entire thing. The one time she decides she has to be brave, and she sees her boyfriend be killed. Yeah. While she's up on stage.
No one pays attention to her. It's really weird.
It is really weird, but also like Scary Movie, the scene in that is just as good.
Fuck Greg, I won.
Yeah, it's amazing. And she is like in the back of a police car in a shot that is used in Scream 2, which came out the same year. Someone being trapped in the back of a police car and have to break their way out.
Yeah.
Chased to her family shop. Her sister is killed. She chased around there through the back streets. She earns the right to survive. And every time I watch it, part of me thinks, even though I know she's going to die,
you want
part
to
of me
make
thinks
it.
Maybe she's going to make it.
Yeah.
There is that dumb moment where she kind of turns around when she's like so close. But in my mind, he was already there. I think if she just kept running, I think he'd went around and I think he would have got her anyway. Just the way he magically appeared behind us, like he was already ahead of her.
Yeah.
Personally, I think she was always destined to die in that moment.
I think.
But it's so well. I think it's one of the best chase scenes, definitely in the 90s.
I agree with that. I think.
It was like Sarah brings her all.
Well, she's Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah.
Like, she's just great. She really is. Like, she sells, like, she's got really good scream as well. Jennifer Love Hewitt also does have a good scream, to be fair. But I think one of the reasons why that whole chase scene works so well, especially, is because it is an extended chase scene, but we have a couple of scenes directly preceding the chase with Sarah Michelle Gellar. Like, we're spending a lot of screen time with her for at least like 10 minutes, like unbroken, because there's a scene where she sees Barry being killed, then there's a scene where she's in the back of the police car, and then we have the chase, which, as I say, is like quite long for a standard slasher chase sequence. So there's probably at least like 10 minutes where we are just with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah.
And you get so invested in her, and she's also presented, I think, as an interesting character. Like the 1 year later version of her, like the version of Helen post the car crash, is she's the one, she's scared and she represents fear, but there's also, she's the one that verbalizes like the sadness that she feels at the loss of her friendship with Julie. Like they were best friends, and they have this little moment in the car together a few scenes earlier where she's like, what happened to us? We used to be best friends, and like, why did we let this happen? And that's a moment that's never resolved. Yeah. They never actually get that moment where they properly make up, where the friendship is kind of at peace. So I think all things considered, by the time Sarah Michelle Gellar actually dies, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh. But I also agree on your point. I think, Julie is absolutely set up to be the final girl.
Yeah.
For sure. But what a great twist it would have been if it was actually Helen. Like, what if Julie died and Helen survived? That would have been great.
Again, we would have pulled Scream comparisons there, killing off, like, the lead.
Yeah.
It's such an iconic death.
Yeah.
now, and it hits that much harder because she's such a likable character. It's going to kind of lean into an issue I have with the film. Is that no offense to Jennifer Love Hewitt, I don't think Julie's written very well. She's got that horrific fringe. That would make
90s not good.
Scream-free Courtney Cox go, "What you thinking?"
Yeah, it's not great.
It's pretty bad. And I think she is genuinely trying her best, but the problem is for me, Julie is just not an interesting character.
She's not interesting. And I think we'll get to the cons in a minute, because Julie features quite heavily in a lot of them. But just to pick up a few other points that I really like. So it doesn't really last that long, but I do like the investigative element of the movie too.
Yeah.
We've established it is basically a whodunit, and we get that scene where Julie and Helen, they go and visit, I think she's called Missy Egan, who's played by Anne Hesh, R.I.P.
She plays that so well.
She actually does. I'd forgotten how good she was.
I actually really liked her in the Psycho remake. I think she did a really good job.
David, that's a different film. We're not talking about Psycho.
I know, it's
1998. But it's a shame, because she is a really good actress in this. I think, I've not really admittedly seen a lot of Anne Hesh's stuff, but she does a good job. But I do like that whole sequence where they go and they pretend to be almost like there's a Nancy Drew element. They take on pretend to be different people, and they create this backstory as to why they need to be there, and they're asking her questions.
Because Julie has worked out through the newspapers who it was that they ran over.
She seems to be the only one of the four that's seemingly the only one of the four that's felt guilty enough to look into who it actually was that night that they ran over. So I do really like that side of it.
I've got issues with it.
Okay.
Should we explain who the killer actually is?
Do it before we forget.
Yeah.
Because this is a big problem.
Every time we watch this film, and granted, it's usually a couple of year gaps I watch. I know it's Muse Watson. I know it's the actor, but I always forget who the killer is. Because the investigative side doesn't grip me.
No, I'm exactly the same. I always forget who it is. I always forget the motive. And it is very clumsily kind of explained in the end, because it's not really explained.
They're looking for someone Baby Blue?
Billy Blue,
not Baby Blue. Billy Blue, who Anne Hesh says was a friend of her brother, David Egan.
Who goes to visit Anne Hesh after the brother dies.
And they think, he must be the killer. Shocker, it's Ray, it's Freddie Prinze Jr.
His boat is called Billy Blue.
Yeah,
and
so we have a brief we have a brief moment where Julie thinks that her ex-boyfriend is the killer.
Yeah.
And it's look at Freddie Prinze's face. He's no killer.
That's
why he didn't get the role of Billy in Scream.
He's just too pretty.
He is. But he was also interested in who they hit, and he wanted to kind of check in and almost pay condolences.
Yeah, that's why he goes
he was driving.
He was the one behind the wheel.
That's why I think they could have lent in more on him, just to show the guilt he would feel about that. But because they want to set him up as a potential killer, he's in the background. So David Egan was not the man they hit.
No.
It's a man called Ben Willis.
Yes.
Who was a fisherman.
Yes.
Kids like you should be out having fun. Drinking. Partying. Running people over. Getting away with murder. Things like that.
David Egan, and we see him in one shot at the beginning. He has no lens down. We see him on a cliff drinking. We find out from the internet and newspaper articles that he was dating Susie Willis.
Ben's daughter.
Yeah. I was trying to think, have I got that right? Yeah. And in the drunk driving accident, prior, she had died while he was driving, and Ben killed David.
In revenge.
Then they hit Ben with the car.
Yeah.
But it was David's body that was discovered.
Yes.
So Ben survived being hit by the car. So they didn't actually kill anybody.
Yeah. Couple of things. Basically, that bend in the road is clearly dangerous.
Yeah.
Because, David Egan, it's imagined, killed Susie on that same stretch as well, albeit accidentally. Obviously, our group of characters, they do the same thing with Ben Willis.
It's weak because we see David in one scene. They're so heavily reliant on characters that we don't physically meet. There's no flashbacks. We never hear them. We never see them have a conversation. And it just loses me. I constantly get a bit bored when they're doing the whole
Well, I think
that investigative part of it. I think Muse's performance as Ben brings it back, but at the same time, it's like, oh, he's the father to this character that we've never met.
Yeah.
That personally, they think they ran over. Oh, we've also never really met him.
It is clumsily revealed because, it's David Egan, the person that they think they ran over.
Nothing good happens to Davids in movies.
That's true. They're either die or they're dicks. Sometimes both. This one's both.
He's both.
But yeah, this one character who we see very, very briefly at the beginning, he's very easy to forget about. But yeah, you're right. Like we come to piece all this information together just by Julie looking at these articles online. And if you're not a quick reader, it's very kind of easy to miss because we also don't get any flashbacks. And I think there is something to the fact that you and we both consistently
forget the mystery.
We forget who it actually is. And so yeah, it's Ben Willis killed David Egan for revenge for accidentally killing his daughter. Ironically, on the same night that the group were, driving their car on this bend in the road. But ultimately, the reason why Ben Willis is now stalking our core group is nothing to do with his daughter. It's just because he's out for revenge that they ran him over.
Yeah, so all this
investigating
that they do to try and find out who it was they ran down,
yeah,
what
they're piecing
happened.
together this mystery of David and Susie and was it suicide? Was he killed? Like, what's going on? And Ben Willis is just out after our
he's
group
angry
because he was
would
ran over.
Would you not be? Because when they get him to the docks, he's alive.
Twice they're not good killers. So yeah, ultimately that's another thing. Our group don't actually kill anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, what they did is still pretty shitty, but
it is, it
is very.
They are kind of responsible for their own demise.
Please, it was an accident.
I know all about accidents, and let me give you some advice. When you leave a man for dead, make sure he's really dead.
It's very clunky, and like that again. Just to go back to Scream briefly, the climax in the kitchen, in the original Scream film, like it's iconic. No one forgets who the killers are in Scream. You never forget the motive. You never forget the dialogue. It's different with I Know What You Did Last Summer.
If you were in a movie quiz and the question was, who is Ben Willis?
Yeah, you're
not gonna. If even the fisherman, you could probably guess, but if you just got given the name Ben Willis, you're not gonna get.
No,
it's not obvious.
It's really not.
But even Billy Loomis and Stu Macher.
Yeah, totally.
You know who they are.
Absolutely. I even had to write it down for the sake of doing this video, just so I had clarity on who everyone was.
Yeah. So that. I do like the final confrontation on the boat. It's
I've
fun.
got
There's a good
little
chase. I think Freddy, does put up a really good fight. And the only reason he loses the upper hand is because Julie distracts him.
Ray!
What?
Yeah, I know, he was doing it.
Maybe it's turns to look at it and then he gets hit off the boat. It's
I feel like we're now steering into weaknesses, cons territory.
Oh, I've been in weaknesses for a while.
Okay, so you're right. Okay, that's fine. I got to talk about Julie then, because
go for it.
My gal Julie.
I've already trashed her character a little bit.
I've got nothing against Jennifer Love Hewitt. Like, admittedly, I've not actually seen her in a lot of stuff outside of this. I always just associate her as Julie James. I do have problems with the character.
She's no Sydney.
She's no Sydney.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, though. Helen is more Sydney.
Yeah, there's a strength to the character that we see in the sequel that I don't think we see here, but that will cover the sequel another time.
Next week even.
But yeah, even before the hit and run, Julie does not really stand out to me. The costumes that they give her is these long cardigans and the classic thing of the sleeves covering the hands. She's very meek and she's wearing this long dress and she's wearing the little white ankle socks and just kind of presented as this very meek, almost kind of feeble character. And when she's next to Sarah Michelle Gellar, who's just a freaking knockout, it's okay, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to present these two characters as very different people. And I get it for the sake of the story, because ultimately Julie is the one that is immediately we have to go to the police. We've got to call this in, even if it's anonymously. We've got to call this in. So I get it. But then when we meet her 1 year later, I will never get over the reveal of traumatized Julie. That turnaround to I'm gonna try and do it. I can't do it properly, but it's so like laugh out loud ridiculous. Like it's so dramatic, and they give her these bags under the eyes.
What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? And there's some like contention as to how that scene actually came about. There's different schools of opinion.
There might have been a 10-year-old kid that won a competition and directed it.
Or it might have always been scripted.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Freddie says it was always scripted and he was there on the day and there was no kid there. Unless the kid had... I feel like if this is true, and Jennifer has said that it's true, where's the interview with the kid?
Yeah, who is this kid?
Thing is, I do actually quite like that scene for how ludicrous it is.
It is
and
ridiculous.
That's another Hitchcock reference, isn't it? The crane shot.
Oh, yeah, apparently. Yeah.
But I don't think a 10-year-old kid would direct it as a Hitchcock shot.
It's not my least favourite scene in the movie. I mean, it is like...
It's pretty memorable.
It's iconic at this point. Like
it's also pretty dumb.
It's pretty dumb. Like a lot of stuff in this movie
Was it Dead Meat calls it the Predator stance?
Yeah. But there's just other things about Julie that kind of aggravate me. Like she... there are scenes when characters are trying to get close to her, and like Ray, I think he's trying to have a little bit of a heart-to-heart with her. And she just runs away. Like she's wearing these...
I can't know you.
Yeah, she's like, I like you, I can't know you. And she's wearing these, again,
what's he supposed to do with that information?
Very kind of like childlike outfit. She's wearing these dungarees, and again, like the long hair, and she looks about 10 years old, and she just runs away.
You could wear that outfit today, easily.
You could wear it today. It's just more like the way she just runs off. Like she can't deal with it. It's like, that's not, I don't want my final girl to be running away and like acting like a child. It's like, come on, Julie, fight. And that's why I actually prefer her in the sequel. We've kind of touched on Ray is a bit of a nothing character, and this is not, again, it's not against Freddie Prinze Jr. because I actually feel for the guy. Now I realise he had a pretty shit time on the movie, and the director just made it very obvious he didn't like Freddie. Which is interesting because actually if you go on IMDb on the trivia, there's a lot of stuff saying that how the director wanted Freddie Prinze and was like advocating for him to get the role. Which apparently is bullshit.
Yeah.
You can't always trust IMDb. That's the moral of this episode.
Yeah. No, he was very against Freddie because he wasn't his first choice.
But I, again, talked about the contrast between Helen and Julie, like even just the way that they dress. But when you've got Ryan Phillippe as Barry and you've got Freddie Prinze as Ray, again, you've got two kind of polar opposite characters. And even though Barry, Ryan Phillippe's character, is not the most likeable of the guys or even just of the group, he is nevertheless the more interesting guy because he is like full of aggro, and like even at the beginning, again before they kill the guy, supposedly kill Ben before the hit and run, he's like he's the macho man, and he's the one that's getting drunk, and he's the one that opens up the sunroof and is just being a dickhead, like basically responsible for the crash. Even though Freddie was driving, it's still Ryan Phillippe that kind of caused it. But then even as soon as they do hit Ben, Ryan Phillippe's reaction is so like visceral, and then the way he literally like puts his hands on Julie's throat, like threatens her, saying like you're gonna promise me now that you're never gonna speak of this. It's like someone should have stepped in and like pull that man away because he's a violent guy.
Then you got Helen who's just horrified.
Yeah.
You've got Ray who's just he almost looks like he's got PTSD.
Just like instantly, like. Oh, my
being
life is over.
Being the one who was driving.
Yeah.
I think he does sell that quite well. Just it just does like a blankness. It's like a...
Yeah. Oh my God. But
I don't really think he knows what's going on at this point.
No, and I love that.
This goes back to how strong that sequence is.
It really is. Like I know we're talking about cons, but just I really do enjoy Ryan Phillippe's performance. I think it's really and especially when you get moments where he kind of cracks and like he not breaks down, but there are moments of vulnerability with the guy for sure. But ultimately, it just makes Ray less interesting.
Yeah.
Like by definition, he's not as interesting to watch, and that is a shame. And I think there's also an argument to be made. We were saying like what a good twist it would be if Helen was maybe the final girl. How interesting would it have been if Helen and Barry were the final girl and final boy? Yeah. Like Barry arguably didn't deserve to survive at the end, but I mean, that would have been cool.
Yeah, but I think it also leads into what I mentioned prior when to have that brief moment where I think, is Ray the killer?
Yeah.
Which, it's kind of weak how they put it in there. The whole Billy Blue bit is weak, but it does mean that for a lot of the movie he has to be sidestepped.
He's totally sidelined. Yeah, it's like he needs to be sidelined enough that we can consider him a suspect. But I also don't think they succeed really in doing that. Like, I don't think even when I was young and I was watching this, I ever really thought Freddie Prinze Jr. was the killer.
Yeah, no.
I was like, no, not Fred.
Like, I'm pretty sure I know Ghostface is the killer in this because that's a scary movie told me.
Yeah, exactly.
But like,
Yeah.
this isn't a bad movie by any means. It's
Oh my god, we hit a boot.
It almost feels like a B movie slasher.
Look, one of the things I really love, and I think it's only going to grow, is the 90s isms of it. And
it's a rather bloodless film.
It is, yeah. They added that in.
Yeah,
afterwards.
and there were heavy restrictions on blood in especially slashers in the 90s. And I think it's creative enough to make the kills interesting, but there obviously is very few kills in it.
Yeah, there's not... Yeah, there's only like 6 deaths, I think, in the whole movie. And one of them you don't even see.
Yeah, it's never our favourite slasher franchise, this one.
No.
But I do always get enjoyment out of rewatching this films. Like, you advocated for us doing this one. I did. Slightly like, I don't know if I could be bothered to watch the whole trilogy.
Well, the reasons I really wanted to do it, it's an iconic summer slasher. There are talks of a new movie in the works, where I think it's basically been confirmed.
We'll mention what that might be about in the next one, once we get to the conclusion of these characters.
Yeah. But I think it's worth doing. I mean, I know we've sort of pulled a few things to pieces there, but overall...
It's an imperfect movie, but...
It is, but, it does the job. Like,
I would actually recommend it if you're trying to get into horror. Obviously, if you're going to pick 90s horror, you watch Scream.
Yeah.
But I think if you're truly into a piece of Scream, you need to watch a few slashers to know what they're... not essentially parrying, but writing the rules for. But then as soon as you're finished with Scream, watch I Know What You Did Last Summer, because then you can see a film that has a direct correlation to that one, to Scream.
Definitely.
And that's why I think it's quite an important one in slasher history.
It's one of those films, it's like a little bit of a microcosm in for a particular place and point in time. And it's like, I know people are pointing this out in Scream that, kind of like serves to further distance it from teen films today. But Scream, like, the characters are very wealthy. Like, they live in a very nice part of California. They live in these massive mansions. And it's very similar in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, the characters have that Scream level wealth.
Well, Ray doesn't.
But Ray doesn't. He's the only one. He's the exception.
But we don't see where he lives.
No, otherwise, they're like, they live in these beautiful houses and, like, 6 bedrooms.
Like, Helen's dad's a business owner.
Yeah, he's a business owner, and, like, Ryan Phillippe's house is just, like, insane. And, stuff like that you don't really see in
It's
teen
pretty
films
people
now.
dying. That's what we wanted in the 90s.
What was it Freddie Prinze said in his podcast? It's like, pretty people with problems.
Pretty people with problems.
And it's like, but yeah, that does actually sum it up. These guys got a pretty big problem.
Yeah.
It is an interesting film. In some ways, I think it works really well. That opening is stellar. Like, it gets better every time I watch it. It's just, unfortunately, some of the rest of the movie is kind of hit and miss. But I will always advocate for people to watch it if you've not already.
I mean, now that we own it, I probably will watch it again.
Oh,
I like the special features on it. Really, this is like quite a good Blu-ray collection as well. We weren't going to do all 3 of them, but because we have all 3 of them, we are going to do all 3 of them. We've done that for you. You'll find out in 2 weeks' time how much of a struggle that was.
Quick shout out to the scene where Helen's hair is cut off. I love that. I love that moment.
He does a very good job.
I love Sarah Michelle's reaction to it, where she just
because she's like the pageant queen.
Yeah, she's a pageant queen.
Very vain. So the killer cuts her hair off, but it's like nice length.
Yeah,
He managed to make it work.
It's like they tried to make it into like a bit of a bird's nest, but it's like ultimately he kind of did her a favour, because the hair she has anyway is really nice. And then also just the sort of epilogue scene at the end where Julie's in the showers and...
Oh, I forgot about that.
Not to dwell on it too much, because
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter, but it just serves for me to dislike Julie even more, because the turnaround in that character, in that scene where, she's on the phone to Ray and, oh God, what does she say? She's like, Ray, you can ravage me in 2 weeks. I love New York, but I love you more. And it's just this really kind of trite dialogue that, Kevin Williamson, you're phenomenal, but what are you doing in this scene? Like, this is bad. And it's not even like the performance is bad. I think it's just, that's hard dialogue to sell. It was just, it was a bit weird.
It's when she goes back into the showers and I still know.
I still know.
In the scene and then jumps
Jump
out.
scare.
I do like that. But we'll say it's retconned for the next film. It was a dream.
Yeah.
Because they realised with that ending, you can't really follow on.
You can't really go on from there, no. But yeah, I think that was it for my notes, by the way.
Yeah. Give it a shot. It's,
yeah.
If you're wanting that bit of nostalgia for the 90s or just, again, curious about what happened. 'Cause I think 90s horror gets shit on a lot, and there was a lot of weak stuff out there, but there was some like pretty interesting things out there.
Yeah.
The 90s as a whole, I think we're starting to realise were actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
Like fashion-wise, socially.
Totally.
But slashers, like, we all know Scream changed the game.
Yeah.
That's not new news.
And this came in the immediate aftermath of Scream.
And the same year as Scream 2.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is
Tough
insane.
acts.
The turnaround on films back then.
It was insane.
The closest we've seen is like between Screams 5 and 6, was just under a year.
Yeah.
And that was, how often do you see that today?
I
That's
know, it was
I
staggering.
know that there's going to be a longer gap between Scream 6 and 7.
Yeah.
But I think we are ready
I think we are too.
for another one. So we'll get into
Yeah.
the proposed sequel, but all we've had to deal with recently was a really bad TV series.
And when we say bad, we don't mean bad as
We
in like,
stuck with that
it was
to the
so bad
end.
it was good. It was truly terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about
It
it.
pitched
It was
itself as being an
awful.
adaptation of the book,
Yeah.
but then it's like,
Not a remake of the movie.
it was written for a younger demographic, so you can't isolate a lot of old people because they're not likable characters. The way they talk to each other is just weird. I go sound old here. It's weird and it doesn't make sense. Why are any of these characters friends?
Well,
It's lit very nicely, I'll give it that.
yeah.
The mystery is really boring. The killer reveal is ridiculous. Even if you're adapting the book, you need to throw something from the movies there to keep fans of the movies happy. There's no fisherman.
No.
There's no hook. That's all you needed to at least maybe scrape a second season. It's dog shit.
Well, just
Yeah, I'm done talking about this.
wait. Are you not a fan of it?
No, I'm not. Because I remember going on Twitter right as the season finale came at the same day, and I was like, what the fuck was that?
Just to.
People were so annoyed
I
by
know.
that ending.
We gave it the benefit of the doubt so many times. It's more fool us, really. But just to jump on something you said there quickly, but before, that this is the movie, the original, is the only one where the fisherman, the character of the fisherman, feels like it kind of belongs to the environment, and even
Yeah.
then he's a bit underused.
Yes.
But this is something that with every sequel, with every adaptation, gets kind of weaker and weaker. The connection, like having the fisherman there, becomes tenuous at best. Kind of works in I Still Know. I'll always know. Absolutely ridiculous that the fisherman is a character. By the time we get to the TV show, he's just outright removed. Like they've got rid of him entirely, which I actually think was a hindrance because I would have liked to have
I know
seen
it's set in
him.
Hawaii, but they are on the coast.
They're on the coast, so it would have made a little bit more sense. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like this is kind of the only adaptation I think where the fisherman actually
Makes
works.
sense. Yeah.
They really struggled with as the adaptations went on.
I really hope they do manage to get Muse back. Apparently he just lives on a ranch somewhere now. He's also meant to be a really nice guy.
Apparently, yeah. I get the impression that Freddy's like still kind of in touch with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's often the way, like, the people that play the killers tend to just be really nice guys. I had to go on that tangent about the show I hated.
It was awful. It was so
Yeah.
shit.
It is on Prime if you want to, like, torture yourself.
I wouldn't. It had an okay soundtrack. I'll give it that.
Oh, it did, yeah. It
I'll
actually
give it
did.
that. But the writing was.
There's one character that I
Terrible.
really liked, and they died in, like, episode 1.
I had
or
one
2.
character I liked, and they were killed off pretty early on as well. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm out.
I was like, all the rest of the characters are so unlikable.
I'm a head out now.
At least you go back to this, and it's like, the characters are likable.
Yeah, it's SMG.
Well written.
It's SMG and FPJ. Yeah, that's his initials. Yeah.
The Scooby Gang before they did Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, thanks for stopping by, guys. We'll see you next week for I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
Bye.
Goodbye.